Hey everybody, what's up? It's Chase. Welcome to another episode of the show. That's right, the Chase Jarvis Live Show here on Creative Live. You know the show. This is where I sit down with the most amazing humans and I do everything I can to unpack their brains with the goal of helping you live your dreams in career, in hobby, and in life. My guest today is one of my favorite people. He's a New York Times best-selling author of lots of books, including The $100 Startup, The Art of Non-Conformity, several other things, and he's also the founder of one of my favorite conferences in the world, the World Domination Summit Summit?
Yeah.
Yeah, World Domination Summit in Portland.
Tea party.
Conference,
Gathering.
My guest is the one and only inimitable Mr. Chris Guillebeau in the house.
Chase Jarvis, thank you.
Hi,
Hey man, great to be back.
Yes, new book. And it's we got to talk about a lot of things, but I just like it was sitting here. I couldn't help it. This is gorgeous. I don't know. Pow.
It's heavy too. It's like a weapon also.
Yeah, this is big time, fancy package, man. Congratulations. We'll get to that in a second.
Cool.
Welcome to Seattle.
Thank you. Glad to be back always.
Book talk tonight.
Yep.
How's it going?
It's going great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, things are new. This book just came out. I actually haven't been traveling a whole lot, so it's good to actually get back out on the road and talk with folks. And
well, for you, when you haven't been traveling, how many miles are you gonna have? Only 200,000?
Not that much. No, actually, I'm gonna like lose some of my status and everything.
What?
I know, it's crazy. You know, turned 40 last year.
You're like
reevaluate. I'm like, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
You're the icon of airline status.
I'm gonna pass that mantle on to somebody, I guess. I'm still traveling some. I mean, I went to Thailand a couple months ago. I've got some other stuff coming up, but it's not nearly as much as I used to.
Is that because you've been focused on your book?
Focus on the book. Just kind of focus on my life and just like, you know, what do I want? I mean, so some of it's work. Like I do this daily podcast, you know, 7 days a week. But you know, it mostly is just like what brings me the most enjoyment, the most fulfillment. You know, how do I want to spend, you know, my time? And so just found that I wasn't enjoying as much travel as much as I was, but it's not like I'm writing it off or anything.
Yeah.
I think there are seasons also. There's seasons where it's like,
for sure,
this is what you do for a while. You create, you know, you rejuvenate or something, and then you're like, I want to go and see the world, and you know, all comes back around.
It does. And speaking of coming back around, I want to go back around to the first World Domination Summit that I attended.
You spoke at that first one. You came to, right?
Yeah.
20 something. I don't know.
2012, 2013. I don't know. 13?
Yeah,
14?
I don't know.
13?
30 years ago or something.
That's right. That's what these dark circles under my eyes are from. Because I'm 100 years old now. No, I was so moved by the, I'll call it audience or tribe or community that you've assembled. And truly global, people coming from all over. This is what I love about physical, like face-to-face stuff. It's one of my favorite things about Creative Live, that we've got thousands of classes, but all those classes were made by people coming in from all over the world to sit in one room to make a class. It's not like just on a webcam, you know. Yeah. And you've done that at, you know, it's almost the reverse. Bring thousands of people together to one event. We bring tens of people or 50 people together for thousands of events. I was shocked at how diverse and open and inclusive and interesting and passionate. Like, how have you built that around your work?
I mean, they bring so much to it. I think that's a key point, you know, like, and they really are super passionate. I mean, you probably saw, like, as a speaker, it's, you know, it's one of the easiest audiences to speak to. You can walk out and be like, hi, and everybody's like standing ovation, you know, and I'm like, wow, okay, great. You know, so I don't know how much of that comes from the top down as it is, like, it's just, I guess, from the beginning of my work, like, really interesting people were kind of drawn to it, and I noticed that. And so I was like, wow. I think also a lot of people that were drawn to it kind of felt like they didn't fit in some way. Yeah. And like in the beginning, I thought I was just like writing about travel in the world or whatever, and realized pretty quickly that some people were making like more of an emotional connection to it. Yeah. And so I just wanted to be sensitive to that in turn, and you know, provide a space for that. So I think if you do that, then they, you know, come and bring so much to it as well. So I can't take too much credit for it, you know?
Well, that sounds exactly like you, to not take too much credit for it, but you're at the center of that community. You built it from the ground up. I mean, it's made up of like lots of different people, but part of what I believe that you know the people who are listening and watching right now, and largely there are two groups from trying to go from 0 to 1. start something and go from 1 to 10, get better at it, or find their next chapter. And what I've learned and what I'm enjoying, sort of a rediscovery, because it was known, but I wasn't acknowledging it, that you choose the people that you hang around with. And when you find the thing that you want to do, if you're at home in your underwear in Ohio right now and you're saying like, gosh, I really want to be, get awesome at calligraphy or whatever. And none of that happens alone. You have to build a little community around it. And that community over time, there's this, well, I've always believed, but haven't really articulated it until recently, you have to invest. So clearly you've invested in your community, but for someone who's sitting at home, you launched an online business online business, I would say 10 years ago or whatever. There's someone at home in Ohio or Oklahoma or Oslo saying, great, I want to do that, but where do I find my people? Where do I find my tribe? Where did you find yours, and how did you start to create it?
Well, you start with the people that you know, and everybody knows somebody, right? I mean, the old joke about my blog was like, I started reading my blog and like 5 people are subscribed to it, and one of them is my grandma. And I'm like, okay, cool, my grandma's reading my blog. And then I realized she had 2 email addresses and she'd signed up twice. She's actually like 40% of the readership. So everybody knows somebody. And like when you're talking about like building this community, I was just thinking, I was like, well, you know what? Last night I was in Denver and I was talking to like 100 people, and 100 people is not a small group by any means, but still, it was very much like when I got started with the blog. For me, I had this travel thing going, so I went to a lot of places. Not everybody can do that or wants to do it, but like with the first book I had, I went to all 50 states and met readers. I was like, whoever's out there, come show up. And it was really just a beautiful thing, because sometimes like 10 people would show up, and that was okay. So if you're out there in Ohio or Oslo or whatever, first of all, what is it that you're trying to create? What is that calligraphy thing? What is your message? What do you want to share with the world? And then I don't think you need to worry so much about like, how do I scale this message? Right? I don't think you have to worry so much about that, how to go from the 1 to the 10 or whatever, if you're in that early position. It's first of all, just be true to your message. And then once you have one person out there that actually cares about it, then that person is like your hero then. It's kind of interesting because they're looking up to you, but you're going to derive a lot of energy and value from them as well. And then from 1 person to 5 to 10 to however many, so the numbers aren't so important. So I think it's possible to treat your customers, fans, readers, followers, et cetera, just like the most amazing people in the world, because they really are, to you. And I think if you have that attitude and that spirit, and you try to like carry that over throughout all that you do, then you're probably going to go far. But even if you don't go like far, like you're going to be able to build a good little business. You're going to be able to do work that you believe in. You're going to be able to like open new doors, new opportunities. Because I had no idea when I started what was going to happen. I didn't have like a strategic plan. It was just, I'm doing things I'm excited about.
You said something earlier about how you spend your time. Was that your primary lens through which you looked at what you wanted to do, or was it the other way around? I know I want to be a travel hack writer, or however you described yourself in the early days, and non-conformist.
I mean, it was a very broad label, by design. Because I didn't want to get pigeonholed.
But I don't know.
I think I was also interested in outcomes. I was interested in like, want to quote unquote build some kind of community. I want to write a book. Want to have an online business. But again, it was really vague, in the beginning. In the beginning, it was, I don't know if it was so much like deliverable based or time based as it was like feeling based, or like, it was like, I have a sense that I don't want to get like esoteric or like overly spiritual, but I like a sense that there's something out there that I have to discover, right? And I think a lot of people feel this way from a variety of backgrounds. There's something out there that it's either my calling or my mission, or maybe again, I'll think of it in a different way, but there's something out there for me. And so I felt that, and I was like, interested in going on this path of discovery to figure out what it was. And the only way that you do that, I think, is like when you see the next step, you take that next step. You don't actually know all the steps.
Right, you don't have to see the whole flight, the whole staircase.
You won't,
right?
actually, you won't be able to. In fact, I think like if you think you can see the whole flight of staircase or whatever it is, then your vision is kind of limited, actually. Because once you start taking these steps, you're like, wow, actually the vision is bigger than I thought. Didn't know I was going to do that conference with thousands of people coming. Had no idea. Didn't like I wanted to write 1 book. Now this is like the 6th book, and I love writing books. I love everything about it. All the other stuff that came, it was like I just had the 1 step, and so I took that step.
Can we go into your creative process a little bit? Because, and I'm going to ask you to think about it in 3 different buckets. There's the bucket of writing books. There's the bucket of creating all of the amazing online classes that you've created. Creative Live, not aside.
Yep.
And then the event you've created, the World Domination Summit, which is just bonkers. You're thousands of people come in and take over. Portland's not a big place, so you put like 3,500 people. I think you've decided to scale it down now, but when it was at 3,000 or 4,000 people, you're like, there's not a person in Portland who doesn't have the WDC, WDS badge on. You're like, hey, you don't like go anywhere without seeing them.
Yeah,
but in each of those things, like what was some of the creative process? Because I think, again, I'm trying to make this relevant for as many people, and those are really big markers for creators and entrepreneurs. And you could see whether it's an online business or a business in real life, doesn't matter. Just what's your creative process for each of those?
I actually think all 3 of them start from the same like desire or again feeling or intent, or like, if I look ahead, I want to see this book out in the world. I want to have this online course done. I have this, again, vague generalized idea of having people together in a room and talking about all these different values and explorations and so on. So it really starts with that.
The feeling that you want.
Yeah, very much. The feeling, like, what do I want to have for that? And then, because I'm actually a pretty practical person, like I know we're talking like big picture, but I'm actually really like practical, like, here's my list of steps, here's what I'm gonna do today, because if I do these 5 things, I'm getting closer to that, product or whatever at the end. But I think it's actually sometimes a mistake to start with that, because you could then spend like all your time making the wrong thing, basically. And I don't wanna like put that on people, because if you're not sure what to make, just make something, right? But at the same time, if you're trying to like really pursue some kind of legacy work or do something that you want to be proud of at the end of the day, for me, and you, like lots of people out there, there's lots of projects that we could work on.
Yeah.
So when I like on the front end, what is it that I really want to create? And then from there, it's like, to bring people together for an event, the most important thing you have to have is interest in that event. You can figure out everything. Like the first year at WDS, we had no idea we were doing about anything in terms of event planning and like AV stuff and like signing contracts with venues. And I mean, I would go to have these meetings and they would ask all these questions. I had no idea what, I'm sure they thought I was ridiculously stupid, which I was. But I mean, like the point is, we went away and then we filled that building.
Yeah.
We filled that building, the Art Museum in Portland the first year, the Newmark Theater the second year. So if you have the demand in that way, you can figure everything else out, I think, right? And so the same is true for a book. If you have something you really believe in, a message, then everything else is just reverse engineering. Everything else is, okay, what's the best way I put that out in the world? Do I need a publisher? Should I do it myself? What is the best format? How do I present this message? What is the outline of it? And then when it comes to the writing, so the book is going to be X thousand words approximately. What's a reasonable figure that I can write every day? And then of course there's an editing process and all that kind of stuff. But I just feel like these are just details,
Yeah.
These are just details.
And you discover, is your premise that you discover those details when you get there?
Yeah.
Is that like the next step in the process?
Yeah, and then the more you do this stuff, then the more like you feel more confident in it. Like experience kind of produces this confidence, and you're like, okay, I did this before, so I know I can do it again. And hopefully I'm not just doing the same thing over again, and hopefully I'm like next leveling it.
Yeah.
And I think if there's no challenge, then it's also a time to be like, whoa, it's like if I'm just doing the same thing and I'm not afraid of anything, if I don't feel any nervousness, then I need to reevaluate, because I think that's actually part of the creative process.
Yeah. That's part of what made me sort of try something besides just the commercial photography that I had done for a decade. It was like, when you, like, I know exactly what to say to the art director. She's gonna walk over here, and then I'm gonna say this, and she's gonna go, "Oh my God, that's awesome!"
Yeah.
Like when you can see everything before it happens, and when it was still living a dream, but you're like checking your watch. I was like, and it took some real personal work to figure out that was signed to, like, take another leap.
Most people don't do that. Most people come to that place and they have that same experience that you just described, but then they don't do anything about it, because they're like, well, the way they evaluate is like, well, it's working. Right?
Yeah.
So therefore, nothing's wrong. And they just kind of stay in that place. And they eventually, there's like not good outcomes from there. They get burned out, they get depressed, they just stop doing their best work, they get angry or bitter, resentful of their colleagues, their boss or whatever. All kinds of bad stuff happens when you don't pay attention to that voice, I think.
Yeah. Have you always been good at hearing that voice? Is that why?
No, I don't think so. I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. I don't know.
You strike me as someone who, like, it's like you move on at the right time. You've just announced that next year will be the last of you. How do you how do you know that next year is going to be the last one right now? That's amazing to me. Like, yep, that's going to be my last one.
It's always good to end things on a high note.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it goes back to, so like I had this experience of being in West Africa, like as an aid worker, living on this hospital ship. And like I saw some people that were there for like 10 years, 15 years and beyond. I was there for 4 years. And with a couple of exceptions, a couple of notable exceptions, I saw that most people who were there beyond a certain point really did get kind of burnout.
Yeah.
You know, for better or worse. They were still doing good work, but you could tell they weren't that happy. And so nobody goes into a situation, whether it's being an aid worker or your creative director job or whatever it is, nobody ever goes into a situation thinking, one day I'm going to get really sick of this. You know, if it's a good, if it's like a job, if it's your dream job, nobody goes into it thinking that, right?
Right.
But
and to be clear, I still love photography, for example.
Of course.
I just didn't want to do it that way.
That
so
role,
if you can still love aid work and
that's the point. That role, that thing. So I kind of noticed, first 2 years, I absolutely loved everything. I gave everything to it.
Yeah.
And in the third year, I could tell like a little bit of a shift was beginning to happen. And it was like, okay, I'm giving like 95%. Still pretty good, but that's different, than the 100% or 110 or whatever. And so basically I was like, I want to leave before I get resentful or burned out or whatever. And so that was that. So maybe I've kind of carried that forward in some ways to some of the stuff that I do now. But it's hard though.
Was there a time where you took your battery down to 5 or 10 or 0?
Yeah, I was trying to think about that.
That helped you realize that, like just your self-awareness, like, 95%.
Right.
Like that's an extreme sense of self-awareness that I'm still crushing it, but it's not happening internally.
Well, I mean, I was thinking about your question, like, have I always been aware of that voice? I think I've always been aware of it to a degree, but have I always listened to it? I don't know. Probably not. Probably not. If I think about different times in my life, whether it's creative burnout or personal depression or anxiety, or maybe a sense of purposelessness or a lack of self-worth or various struggles, I probably have missed something along the way. And I can actually be guilty of I really like to work, just like you, right? And I like what I do. I feel really fortunate. I get up and I'm thinking about what's on my list to do, and overall I think that's positive.
Yeah.
But the concern there is that you're just stuck in it sometimes, or you get stuck in it and you don't realize like actually something has changed either in the external environment or in your own internal motivation, and you're not paying attention to it because you're just kind of going along. So I think I definitely have the tendency to do that.
I love the sense of self-awareness. Something had to happen though for you to realize it.
Well, probably lots of something had to happen.
Did you were you just like throwing pizzas in high school and you realized like I really don't want to do this anymore, or like because something had to happen where you said, all right, this is the last time I'm going to let this happen.
Well, I wasn't ever really very good in the traditional employment world. I mean, I kind of learned I was unemployable at a pretty early age. I mean, I did have a pizza throwing job actually for about 3 months. And then I kind of just quit and never returned. But that's how everybody quits a pizza job, right?
Yeah.
I don't think everybody, it's not like anybody's like, this is my life
stressed
purpose.
out about their...
Right.
Well, actually, give me a handful of what are some jobs you had growing up?
So, I mean, it's a short list because it stopped at age 19. I mean, age 19 was the last job. And I've always worked for myself, since then. But yeah, so I did pizza. I delivered some other stuff. I delivered flowers on Valentine's Day.
Oh wow!
Delivered phone books for anybody out there who remembers what a telephone directory, Yellow Pages.
Remember
was.
that?
Yeah.
You used to just show up on your porch and
it's just a huge waste.
Yeah.
It's a colossal waste, and they still make it for some reason. But then I was a telemarketer for 2 days. It didn't.
What's the story behind that?
It was like a job. I was like, I'll
dial for.
Yeah, and I was terrible at it. I never made a single sale. I was trying to sell photography packages, actually.
No way.
Yeah, some ridiculous photography package. Unfortunately, nobody bought it. And so then I never went back, obviously. And then the last job was working at FedEx in Memphis, Tennessee, loading boxes onto a truck. And then I learned how to sell things on eBay, and I never went back to that job and never looked back at any other job.
What were you selling on eBay at the beginning?
Well, in the beginning, it was just random stuff from my apartment. You
Like,
know?
I can sell this.
Yeah, whatever, books,
glass.
video games, you know, clothes, stuff. I mean, and then I learned about buying and reselling. You know, I was like, oh, like let me see what's selling on these auctions. What's the price? You know, what are the closing prices? What's the source of these items? How can I buy these items? And then that was so fun. That was so fun to like learn about. You know, and it's like,
How long ago was that?
20 years. Yeah. 21, 22 years now. I'm 41.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
We know a handful of mutual people that are trying to make a big deal about this. Is it something new now because you've got this resource called eBay, and you're like,
oh my god,
like,
yeah.
I was selling shit in my apartment.
I remember when eBay.com came out,
yeah.
you know, and that's one of my pet peeves, actually, of people thinking that like so much of this kind of stuff is new, you know, or that it's Western, you know, that it's like America invented like being a
buying one thing and the arbitrage model. We invented it, right? Buy something
Meanwhile,
cheaply
like,
and sell it
you
expensive.
used to like be in Sierra Leone and walk out in a village and like every single person is reselling and buying stuff and just hustling and making their own way, and like ladies are carrying all this stuff to the market, and that's how human society has existed, you know, for centuries. So we have a lot to learn, you know, obviously.
The idea of like vlogging, I was like, someone said something like, yeah, this whole new idea of like having a video person on your team to make videos. And I was like, wow, I had a full-time video person in 2005.
Wow, right.
It was very unusual then,
Sure.
But it doesn't feel like when someone labels it as new,
Right.
it's bizarre. The arbitrage model, eBay,
Right.
like, yeah, the flip life, man.
Commerce, you know, like,
Commerce.
you know, I mean, it is true that like,
Yeah.
so that it's like so much more mainstream now, and people are doing it in a way that they didn't 20 years ago.
Sure.
Like you said, when you were doing it then, it was very unusual.
Yeah.
For me as well, like when I was working for myself, like nobody understood it. My friends didn't get it. You know, parents were like, he's doing something on the internet. We hope it's not bad, you know. But now it's much more common, and e-commerce is adopted like more and more places, so
Sure.
that makes it easier and stuff. But yeah, everything's an evolution in that way.
What about, I think, the folks at home who are sitting and listening and watching? There's a desire to do what I think they think the right thing is. Like, there's so many things I could do. How do I know my thing? And you have a magic formula. It's similar to ikigai in Japanese, where like overlapping circles. My personal, and I cite you often whenever I'm sort of talking publicly or in a blog post, or I've said your name 1,000 times in this context, as you have a fantastic system for how to understand what you should be doing, also when to quit.
Right.
Can you share those with us?
Yeah, well, I'm a big fan of quitting stuff, but let's come back to that. So I think you're talking about this model that we developed a few years ago for the Born for This book and concept, which is all about joy, money, and flow. And so basically this model is like you have to have, you know, all three of these things in your life to be truly fulfilled. And you know, there's different times where you might just have two or something, but really if you're thinking about what's my thing, you need to be thinking about all three of these things. And so, you know, money is pretty self-explanatory. You know, what you do needs to be sustainable. Joy is, you know, kind of what makes you come alive, what does make you happy, what are you passionate about. And flow is essentially, you know, that state of doing something that you're really good at, basically.
Aptitude.
Yeah, aptitude, competence, and even beyond just competence, mastery, you know, the potential to master something. And so, you know, I often think of it in terms of when people are like, what should I do? They always start with like the joy, and that's fine. Like make a list of the things that you like to do, sure. But I think it's just as important to like make a list of the things that you're good at, make a list of all your skills, because often these things are connected.
Yeah.
We tend to actually really enjoy the things that we're really good at.
Yeah.
And often if you focus on skills rather than passion, then that's going to lead you to something more marketable, right? Which will kind of bring in the money a little bit. So joy, money, flow. It's always good to just kind of evaluate, like where are you at in your life right now, with your job, with your side hustle, with whatever it is. How is that thing contributing, you know, to all three of these areas? And where are you strongest and where are you weakest, essentially? And it could be a season thing too, right? It could be like, you know, right now I really need some money. Like I'm in debt, I got to deal with that.
Yeah.
So, all right, in that situation, maybe for a time you're working a job that you don't really believe in or something, but you know that you have to have like your eyes on the prize, that ultimately I need to make a change or else I'm not going to be.
Get out of debt, get out of this pickle or whatever.
Yeah. And then the whole thing about like, you know, quitting stuff, I noticed like a while back, that people always assume that persistence is the key to success. And this is very much like an American culture kind of thing of, winners never quit. And you hear the stories about people who, like he failed, 49 times in a row. And then the 50th time, he succeeded, which is so ridiculous because you're like, well, he could have been doing all kinds of other stuff, during the 10 years that he was trying 49 different things, like good for him that he figured it out eventually, but what did he miss, along the way? And I see, my observation, is that successful people, it's certainly been true for myself, successful people have no problem with giving stuff up, have no problem with quitting something, have no problem with saying, like, I tried that, and I thought that was a good idea, but I was wrong, right? Yeah. Or maybe it was a good idea for a time, and now I need to do something different, just like you were talking about. So I think the key is not persistence, it's adaptation, right? The key is like being willing to ask on a regular basis, okay, is this the right thing now? And if it's not, there's a lot of value in just giving that up and moving on, because life is short, right?
Yeah. What's your 2-question test?
2 questions. Oh yeah, when you're trying to decide if you're gonna do I want to quit this thing or not?
Yep.
Is it working? And do I still believe in it? Right.
It's a very simple litmus test.
Yeah,
right?
You can make a lot of decisions that way. Is it working? Do I still believe in it? And if the answers are yes, then great, you keep doing it. And if the answers are no, then you stop. And so you only have to think about it a little bit more deeply when the answers are in conflict.
Yeah. I was recently up at 5 a.m. making some notes about this thing, and you talk, there's this sort of confluence of knowing when to quit. You talked about emotions at the beginning, like I want to do something that brings me feelings and that other people might share those similar feelings. I'm just more and more over-indexing on intuition. And what role does intuition and sort of that inward listening to your gut, whatever else you want to, color you want to put around that, what does that play in your world? Yeah,
I think it's very important. I think I kind of ignore it at my peril, and but I also think it's true that over time you get better at listening to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because in the beginning, well, I don't know what the beginning is, but when you're trying new things, sometimes your gut can lead you astray, and sometimes your gut's like, don't do this, and you're like, I should listen to my gut. But if you kind of, delve a bit deeper, you're like, why am I suggesting not to do this? Because I'm afraid. Well, that actually means maybe I should do it, right? So I think as you kind of get to know yourself a little bit better, you understand what that is. But yeah, for me, very much now, like if I'm evaluating, do I do this project or this one? Not always, but often it's kind of like, what really makes me come alive here?
Yeah.
What might have the greatest impact? What am I actually going to be good at? I think one of the problems of achieving like a certain level or being successful is that lots of opportunities start to come to you. And so you think, I should do that, or I should do that, or like, that sounds good. And that worked for Chase, so therefore I should do what Chase did, or for whoever. And of course you realize that you're actually not going to be good at all those things. And just because the opportunity comes to you doesn't mean it's what you should pursue. And so, I try to listen to that intuition quite a bit.
I'm going to change gears now. That
Sure.
was very, very useful, very helpful. So one of the things that I have, I'm trying to ask more questions like this because we're all at home comparing our day-to-day or the worst parts of ourselves to the highlight reels of everybody else there on social.
Yeah, right.
And so I think when someone looks at you, oh my God, he's got 6 books, New York Times bestseller early on with the $100 startup. He's got this huge conference. He travels thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of miles. Like, it's very easy to look at this life that you've been able to create for yourself. Chris is successful on every level. So to keep it real and balance that, like, what's hard for you? What's hard right now?
Well, I would say, the very first thing that comes to mind is, from time to time, not infrequently, especially over the past like 5 or 6 years or so, but really like throughout my adult life and adolescence, I've struggled with depression and anxiety and, lots of things that are correlated around that, and just a sense of inferiority, or a sense of, like what you said about like you're playing the highlight reels of everybody else with your failures.
Yeah.
I do that a lot. And
but the question that someone in Ohio is asking right now, but Chris, you're standing on stage, you walk out, you don't even actually say anything, and the whole thousands of people stand up for you and cheer, and you brought all these people together.
And that's great, and that's wonderful, but you can have these kinds of experiences and still have personal struggle.
Yeah.
You can still, people who are at much higher levels than I would ever approach can have those kinds of struggles too. So it's not necessarily connected. Sometimes we just have to go through stuff in life. And and I don't know if I have a great 5-step answer for that. I think for me, it starts with just acknowledging that on a regular basis, I am kind of questioning my self-worth, and I am kind of beating up on myself. And the answer is not always just to work harder. The answer is not always just to take on a project. I started therapy. Started doing therapy a few years ago. Been extremely helpful to me. I wish I had started earlier.
Yeah.
If there's anybody out there that's I wish I had done it earlier.
Yeah.
Actually, but one of the things that I learned really early on that I've kind of tried to apply since then is, my first therapist said to me, she's like, Chris, you've been able to do a lot of different things. X, X, X. Basically, none of that's going to matter here. What you're trying to accomplish now, the skills that you have learned are not going to help you. And that was very honest, I was damn, okay. I know how to send email marketing, and I know how to post stuff online, like that. The point is, if you're going to do inner work on yourself, then you have to learn some new stuff, And so I don't mean to derail the conversation.
This is exactly, no, this is what the conversation needs to be about. That's why I'm going here.
Okay, good.
So keep going. I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, I think I was just saying so learning about self-awareness, understanding, different relationship styles, understanding how we form these different styles at a young age and how that affects us later, understanding trauma of childhood, which can be a lot of different things, for a lot of people, understanding how we carry that with us, and if we never really deal with it, then it's going to always be with us.
Yeah.
Basically. And so just in choosing to be more intentional and kind of figuring that out. And by the way, it wasn't I was oh, I've done all these things. Next, I'm going to tackle my inner work. It doesn't work like that. These things, there's what's that quote about the teacher appears when the student's ready or something. It's almost you start working on this stuff when you're in a hard place in life, basically, when you have no choice, essentially. And I felt, in particular, I go back to a time, I don't know, exactly how long ago it was now, but a couple of years when, I thought I had made a lot of progress, and I thought I had learned a bunch of stuff, and I'm doing better now, and I'd been on medication for depression, and I can get off it, and that actually ended up being the precipice to the worst time of all, and I didn't see that coming, and at that time, this depressive period kind of led me to take even a bigger, broader look, and say, okay, what is it all about, and I'm not going to do a good job with anything else that I'm doing in terms of bringing value to anyone else unless I really actually think about how to care for myself. That was surprisingly hard.
Yeah, but also brilliantly insightful if you can catch yourself at a moment where you can be that honest.
Eventually, at age 40,
Yeah, well, to your point, you have to, right? You you get yourself in a position where there's literally no other choice.
That's basically what happened.
Yeah. So what, aside from you talked about therapy, what are some other things that anxiety that you help to, or that you find help you with anxiety? That's, as I ask folks, or I get off stage after giving a talk, and the 50% of the people in some way, shape, or form reference what I would call anxiety. Either they're not doing the right thing and their partner doesn't approve of it, or they're trying to leave their job and their boss doesn't approve of them or their work, which causes them to, and I'll just put it on the bucket of anxiety. And I think this is the sort of the other side of this free life where we are, able to pursue the things we love, and we have created a living and a life for ourselves, that it's all just a breeze. And the reality is that there's, I think, an increasing amount of anxiety, in part because those same tools that allow us the freedom to do what we want to do, they're not always there just to help us. So, punchline, a lot of anxiety nowadays, and you mentioned it. What are, besides just therapy, what are some things that you do to manage?
I think simple observation is always good. for a long time, I went through these like states of anxiety without really understanding what was going on. I would just feel this anxiety, and
how did it manifest for you?
Yeah, how did it manifest? This is something that I struggle with, and I kind of question in therapy, because I'm not very like somatic in the sense of like, this is how it felt in my chest and this is how it felt, in my stomach, which a lot of people can do.
Yeah.
For me, it was just like this like wave of uncertainty or like chaos or confusion that kind of came with me, or sadness, but it was like cycling and stuff. So I think just like observing and like being able to kind of like step out and stuff and say, okay, I'm feeling this way, but I have some experience with it now. And if it's specific to something, then I kind of understand, okay, here's the situation. If it's generalized, then I know it's going to pass, I know it's going to pass. And so I can make my peace with it a little bit. Just some really simple stuff like exercising more and being really careful about what I eat.
Isn't that weird how those things that are that simple?
It really is simple.
There's the stuff that is very nuanced and personal and has to do with very specific things. Mm-hmm. And then on the other end of the same spectrum is like, how are you sleeping?
Yeah.
What are you putting in your body?
Right.
How many drinks a week are you having?
Exactly, yeah. Which, I mean, all those things make more of a difference as you get older too, you know, but even at any age, if you're struggling, that's always a good start. But I would say the number one thing is to not try to hide it, I don't feel like I was hiding it per se, but I don't know that I was being super open about it.
Yeah.
So I think that's helped. Just a lot of people around you probably care about you and want to help you, but they don't know what to do, or they don't know what's going on unless you show them.
Yeah.
And so I think understanding that was also good for me.
Did you create some tools for yourself in order to do that? How have you decided to this is something I need to share?
Well, it's interesting because I just started being, I was going to say more honest, but I don't want to say that I was being dishonest before. Yeah. I just started being more like open and upfront about certain things. I don't know if that was always a good thing, because here's a story, So
I love it when you smirk and it's like 3 sentences ahead. You're like,
I just remember this. I hadn't even thought about this for a long time. In the summer of 2015, my brother died. And I know you know about that, and that's something that's obviously, understatement, affected my life a great deal. And that always will affect my life a great deal. But what I was going to say about the story is, it was like a few months later that, I was doing some kind of like businessy interview somewhere, and I think it was like in San Francisco. It's like some internet marketing kind of thing or whatever. And, they asked, they're like, what's your greatest struggle right now? And I was just like, do you want an honest answer? And she said yes, but she didn't really want an honest answer, but that's what she said, and I was just like, well, this is what's going on in my life, to be very honest with you, here's what happened with my brother, and I still don't know, how to process it, and I don't know if I ever will, and, for anybody out there who's struggling, let's talk about it a little bit, and the whole time I'm just like, this is not the answer she wanted at all.
Her eyeballs are baby saucers, probably.
But I kind of went away thinking, I was like, I went away from that interview thinking, well, I didn't give them what they wanted, but I was honest. I was really honest. So she's like, what's really hard for you right now? I'm like, well, let me tell you, here's what's hard for me. It's got nothing to do with running my online business. It really doesn't. It's got nothing to do with my blog. Yeah. It's got nothing to do with all that stuff.
My growth is slowing, or my email open rate isn't.
Yeah, and if you want to talk about that stuff, that's fine.
Yeah.
But let's just say, what's your greatest struggle when it comes to email marketing?
Yeah.
As opposed to
ask a better question.
Right. So I guess what I'm saying is to come full circle is I just started whenever people would ask, if they were really asking me how I was doing, I would say, really, here's what's going on, which people aren't always, used to or comfortable with.
I think you've always done a fantastic job of bringing that sort of awareness and openness to in your community. Mm-hmm. You've bubbled that up really well. That's one thing that having attended hundreds of conferences, maybe attended thousands, spoken at hundreds, there's what you've done with the World Domination Summit. It just feels very, very special. It's sort of like you're aiming to celebrate those things. Mm-hmm. So A, thank you for that. B, that it seems like out of, I think that just positions people for really good work. There's that internal honesty that affects the gut affects you. Then you work on the right things, you pursue what you love, realize the time is short. There's this sort of personal authenticity that I always walk away from any time we get to hang out, even beyond when we're recording a podcast. I'd like to shift gears again now. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
So, 6th book. When I saw that you'd launched Side Hustle School and that you were doing a podcast every day, like every single day, I was like, who does that? Like,
you would do something like that. You would.
I do it for like very small bursts. Like, what was it? We did 30 Days of Genius, 30 days in a row. I was like, all right. I mean, these were like hour-long interviews. You know, you were aware of that. But 30 days is not. How many episodes into Side Hustle?
The time we're making this conversation, I think I'm on day 873. 873, yeah. I haven't missed a day. You know, 7 days a week. The streak is really powerful. The thing is, the streak keeps you going.
Yeah.
It would be harder to stop now than it is to keep going, right?
Yep.
So, for me, it's actually beneficial to do it every single day. It would be harder to do it like 2 to 3 days a week for me, because I would just forget about it. You know what I mean? If it's every day, I can't forget about it. If it was just like one of many projects,
do you literally record them daily, or do you sit down and batch 5 or 6? Or
I actually record almost every day. So I will batch occasionally, but batching for me is more like 2 to 3 episodes, as opposed to like I'm doing 10 at once or something. Like pretty much every single day I'm recording. I have a setup that comes with me when I travel, and so I've actually.
Is it in your backpack over there?
It is not in my backpack, but it's in my carry-on bag.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back at the hotel.
It's small.
Okay.
Yeah. I actually like the routine and like the ritual of like, okay, I got to do this. You know.
What made you decide to do something like that every day?
Okay, well, I mean, let's talk about why I did the program in the first place. You know, it's called Side Hustle School,
right?
And it's all about regular people, not necessarily people like you and me who are like want to be entrepreneurs and like unemployable and all that, but regular people who have jobs, right?
Yeah.
People who have jobs and don't necessarily want to jump into like the startup culture thing, but they understand that it's good to have more than one source of income. And so, and like, how do they do that? Because so many resources these days are targeted toward entrepreneurs or people who are aspirational entrepreneurs. It's very much about like quit your job and go, you know,
all in,
right? All in, right? And so, like, there's a huge group of people who, for whatever reason, can't just go all in or quit their job, or they actually like their job. Yeah. They actually enjoy what they do. You know, they like working with their colleagues or on the projects or whatever. Like, I think about my mom. Like, she worked for NASA, you know, for I don't know, 20, 30 years, and like. You can't be like a freelancer working for NASA, you know, like on Upwork or whatever. Like, you got to commit. You know,
please design shuttle fin.
right. You know, $150 bid or something. But so for anybody in that situation, how are they supposed to learn about, you know, starting a little business, which I believe you can do without spending a lot of money, without going into debt, without following this traditional path of you know, startup culture. So anyway, that's the whole point of the show, is to like show different stories, a different story, a different example every single day of somebody doing that. I'm not even teaching that much. I'm just storytelling. It's 80% storytelling, maybe 20%. Like,
that's part of what I love about it.
Well, I think nobody was doing that either that way, you know. And so that's part of it. And then why 7 days a week? I like to commit. I was like, what would make it badass? Okay, every single day. And I remember talking with like the CEO of the podcast network that we work with, and we had like 3 conference calls with him. And on the 3rd call, he still didn't understand. He was still like, every single day, that's like 5 days a week. That's a lot. It's like 5 days a week. So how many days are there in the week? You know, seven days. You know, so that's why every day.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the Backend, like who you're working with and what? Like how are you working with a CDN or an MCN or how? Did you find someone to partner with for people at home? Like, I want to get started. I guess my first advice is just start recording things before you start sharing them. Make 5 episodes that only you are listening to.
Yep.
But how have you thought about it? Because that's, you know, what's the publishing platform and how do you think about it? Go a little bit of detail.
No, sure. So I started with. So I wasn't actually sure what I was going to do in the beginning in terms of like, am I going to be on a network? Am I just going to do it all myself? I didn't even have like an ad model. I was just like, I'm just going to make it, you know. But it just so happened that a good friend of mine, Gretchen Rubin, came to me. You know Gretchen, right?
Of course.
Of course. Yeah, you did a thing with her.
She's awesome.
Came to me and said, like, I'm starting a network, like a little imprint. You know, have you ever thought about doing a podcast? I'm like, Gretchen, funny you mentioned that, because I'm like actually outlining this project right now, but it's really specific. I don't know if it's going to work, you know, with your vision. And but anyway, so I ended up kind of looping in with her. And then we were part of a network called Panoply for the first 2 years, and then this year we switched to a different one. So I have a producer, thankfully, because I don't do any audio editing. I'm not good at that stuff.
You just send raw files off?
Yeah. Yeah, but
So
there's actually not a ton of editing that's really required in my show because it's just me. I'm not doing interviews.
Yeah. So are you just talking, or do you write a script and then read the script? Like,
Yeah, I have a script. Yeah. Yep. And now we have a team of writers actually that's working on the stories.
Wow.
So I can't take all the credit for that either. But I obviously doing the analysis on like the final edits and all of that. So I have a really wonderful assistant who now has kind of migrated to the role of content manager named Whitney. And she's actually been with me for all 872 or 73 episodes,
Wow.
kind of working with the people who are featured and then like fact checking and like doing all the different stuff. So I'm definitely really grateful to have those folks around.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
And clearly fuel for your new project here,
Yeah,
which
well,
I'm gonna hold
exactly,
up because
yes.
it is a beast. Look at this thing. I don't like this is well, first of all, I'm gonna 4 color,
Yeah, 330 pages.
330 pages, hardback, like gorgeous, nice spot varnish, so the designers in the world are going to be happy with this. Feel is really cool, but obviously the meat is 300 stories or 300 pages, 100 separate stories of people's side hustle. Is the book 100% mirror of the podcast?
It's not 100% mirror. All of the stories come from the podcast, but a lot of them have updates.
God, if there's 800 of them, you chose the top 15%.
Yeah, we chose like a lot of the most popular ones from the first year in particular. So I wanted to like show, the stories in addition to telling them. And so it's like this visual depiction of all these different people that are doing different, kind of creative, unusual things to make money. I try to be really specific about it because I feel like there's a lack of specificity in this world often, and so I try to be really specific. Like, here's how much it cost. It cost them $150 to start their business. At the end of year one, they were making $24,000. Whatever it is, I want to be really just clear about the practical details. And so the idea is like people can just kind of flip through it, and you can read it cover to cover, or you can just kind of flip through it and see what resonates with you. You're not going to connect with all 100 stories, but I really be surprised if somebody like reads this and doesn't find a couple of things that they're like, oh, I want to go and do something like that. And that's my whole motivation with it.
That's the motivation, is to provide a menu of ideas that, I guess.
Jumping off point, some inspiration. A lot of the stories that we feature on the show now are coming from listeners who were listening in the first season and the second season and have started their projects, which is really cool. So
I want to be on the show. Here's my idea.
I don't think that was their motivation. I think they're like trying to actually make money for themselves, but secondary benefit being in the show. So, I'm hopeful that people who read the book, same kind of thing. But
it's beautiful. It's giant, huge, great photography in there.
Well, again, a team effort for that, because I'm not like traveling the country taking photos. That's not my skill. Wonderful interior designer, Emma Campion, who worked on that, all that stuff. A lot of photographers, a lot of people.
Huge. Most surprising side hustle.
Most surprising.
Or I hate superlative questions, so I'll restate that. Couple just surprised you.
That's good. A couple that people tend to like enjoy. There's this guy who's like drop shipping live crickets to reptile owners. So there's a market of people who are buying live crickets. They need to feed their reptile, and so he gets into this business, but doesn't actually like stock the inventory. So he works with cricket farms. Takes orders in, like passes the order and does that. He's making like $1,000 a month or something doing this. And the funny part about this story, if that's not funny enough, is like one time in the beginning, he's like, I should actually order once to see like what the product is like, just for quality control. And so he orders a batch of crickets from the farm, and the crickets arrive, and there's supposed to be some instructions that are included, but like he opens the box and they're not there. And then he learns that the crickets will eat anything that has paper in it. So from that lesson, he's like, I can't include any instructions. I need to email, the instructions need to be digital, basically. So I got the guy doing that. And then there's a woman in New York who has this business called Troll Cakes Bakery and Detective Agency. And so every single day she is baking a cake. This is a good story for anybody out there who's ever had like a negative comment on Facebook or a hurtful comment directed to you. She's baking these cakes and she frosts them with the negative comments written on it. So it's like, you're going to hell, like, what's up with your hairstyle? You know, how about that contract you made with Satan? And then she mails it to the person who left that comment. And she calls a detective agency because for an additional fee, if you don't know who left the comment, she'll find their address, basically.
No.
And she's doing this every single day. We've got a whole like gallery of photos in it. And so that's like, you know, never would imagine people would get paid to do this. And this isn't her retirement plan, you know, but it's like, crazy thing that she's doing, and she's making some money with it, and like she's going to have this story for the rest of her life.
Can you give me one more level of detail?
One more level of detail?
On her, like, I don't think I want to reveal the source of how, because that sounds like it could get into some gangster shit.
Yeah.
What is the cost to send a troll?
It's pretty cheap, actually. I think it's like $50 or something, you know?
To have a human bake a cake and frost it with a comment and then mail it to them.
You'll get a picture, obviously, so you can post it if you want or not or whatever, yeah.
Wow.
You know, and some people are doing it as a joke, of course, but I think it's also kind of like, can you imagine if you're the person who's like leaving these jackass comments on people's Facebook or whatever, and like, I think she started it when like she read something on Dolly Parton's blog and somebody was like criticizing Dolly. It's like, why are you doing that? Like, what, you know, people like Britney Spears, you need Jesus, you need, you know, all this kind of stuff. So can you just imagine getting that in the mail and like, it might actually cause somebody to think, who knows?
Wow. All right, I'm looking for trends now. So those were interesting.
Yeah.
Give me some trends. Most like repeatable, possible, most common, solid, middle down the road.
Yes.
Side hustle where people can like, hey, most people can be successful at this thing.
I'm glad you asked actually, because I like telling the kind of crazy stories, but like I'm not trying to tell people they should go out and do this stuff. You know, it's just highlight.
Cricket farming is a little esoteric.
Right. So we talked a little bit about reselling. Mm-hmm. So anybody can buy and resell. Like anybody can buy something and then resell it. There's lots of different models to do that. I think that's actually the number one suggestion I would make if somebody's like, how do I get started with a side hustle now? Like you can do this right now. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. Lots of platforms for that. Also a lot of service businesses. Of like, there's something that you're good at, and there's somebody out there who needs help with it. There's a guy in the book who he's lived a lot of different places around the world. Now he's got a family, and so he's often meeting other families who are like, I want to like bring up my kids in different countries, but I don't know. Like, I got questions about education and taxes and like vaccinations and all kinds of stuff. So he's doing like consultations, you know, for that. There's a woman in I think it's upstate New York who. She's got a few different sisters. She's got 3 different sisters. She was part of a couple of different wedding plannings, and noticed that like all these like wedding accessories are super expensive, like the veil and the tiara and then whatever else. And she's like, why isn't there a like a rental market, you know, for these things? Like nobody's doing that.
And what do? You hold it. You keep your thing.
Yeah. Do you need all these keepsakes for the rest of your life? You got the dress. That's enough of a racket, right? But here's like all this other stuff. So she starts a business called Happily Ever Borrowed. And she's like renting this out to people like all over the country. And she's really got, like she did like $80,000 last year, you know, as a side hustle. So also I should point that out. Like a lot of the stories, they're not people that are just making a few $100s a month.
Yeah.
Like a lot of them are 6-figure incomes.
Wow.
Or even more in some cases. Yeah. So like I'm trying to help people like truly get ahead and truly like create an asset for themselves, which you're not going to get by driving for Uber or Lyft.
Yeah.
You're not going to get by participating in the gig economy. You know, to really create something for yourself, you have to actually make something for yourself. And it's not as hard as people think it is.
Do you have, baked in that last little phrase, like it's not driving for Lyft, it's not like, it sounds like you're into create value creation for yourself on some sort of beyond just transaction time money.
Yeah.
But what are your biases on steering people towards or away from, you know, and I think this is like, honestly, this is the perfect, you're such an amazing guest. Like anyone home is like taking notes like crazy right now, but you really, you know, the Creative Live audience is, you know how to speak their language.
Sure.
Give a little bit of counsel.
So a couple of questions you can ask yourself, you know, about any different idea or opportunity. You know, does someone else control, you know, like all the rules, the entire environment, you know, for this opportunity, which is how it is for the gig economy with all these different platforms. You know, if they do, that's not a bad like part-time job, but that's all it is. Just understand that's what it is. You know.
Give me an example.
Well, again, like driving for Uber or Lyft.
Okay.
You know, that's not bad to make extra money, and you can set your own schedule. But then, like, they're setting your competition and they're capping your compensation. You're not going to have the chance to earn money while you're doing something else. Like, you are trading time for money doing that. So, I mean, ultimately, so like, let's say the next question is, does this have the potential to earn money for you while you're doing something else. And this is, I think, the greatest thing in the world, is to like wake up in the morning and like check your email and somebody has sent you a PayPal payment overnight, or a Venmo, or however it works. I mean, that I think that's the goal, right?
Yeah.
So whatever your opportunity is or your idea, does it have the potential to do that? That's great. So are you in control? Does it have the potential to earn some sort of passive income, even if you have to like then do something for it? Again, is it something you're excited about? Is it something that's really bringing value to other people? It has to be not just interesting to you, but interesting to other folks. Has anybody done it before? And if so, that's not bad, by the way. If somebody has done your idea before, it doesn't mean you can't do it. It's actually probably a good sign, because it shows there's a market for it. I'm trying to think what else. That's a good start.
Yeah, that's deep. There's plenty. I mean, like it's a lifetime of stuff there. You said something. You said something earlier. Just see if you tried 10 of those things you like. You talked about this. We talked about the intersection of what you love, what you're good at. I think all those probably are still in play.
Yeah.
But this idea of scalable, making money while you sleep, not trading, not transactional. There's another. I'm going to bring something you said early on into the picture, which I think is just genius, and I want you to tell me about it. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to scale.
It probably won't be big at first.
So
that's good.
Talk about this. Why?
Not only does it not have to be big.
But everyone's like, wait a minute, I want to be able to make $1 million, Chris.
Well, great, maybe you will, but if you're not making any money at all now, start with making $100. Start with making $1,000, because one, it can lead to something else, but also just on its own, that $1,000 is going to feel really good.
Yeah.
If you have never made money for yourself before, the first time you make a few $100s, the first time you make like $50, it's going to feel good. I know that. Like I've heard these stories over and over. I'm on book tour and I ask people, like, raise your hand if you've ever been paid for something apart from your paycheck, and probably like half the audience raises their hand, and then I ask, like, do you remember when that happened? Everybody still remembers. Like so many people, it's like this memorable thing. So it doesn't have to be big. In fact, it probably won't be. And also, just remember that you're not making a lifetime commitment, which is another reason why people don't start projects. Is they're like, I don't know what to do, because it might not be the, blah, 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 it doesn't matter. Like this is not like a life partnership kind of situation here that you're trying to decide. You're trying to decide, what is the project that I start right now? That live cricket, drop shipping guy, he's not going to be doing that forever, but that's okay. All these projects, maybe they'll go on to be like huge businesses. In lots of cases, they're great, learning experiences. They're bringing them a lot of money. They're bringing them security and options to go on to do something different.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be big, and it doesn't have to be like a life commitment.
In fact, it sort of shouldn't be big. It's almost.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Think of everything that any sort of side project that ever turned. Creative Live was a side project.
Yeah. Right.
Right. I think of back even taking pictures with my iPhone. I thought that was cool, and then we did an app. And I think it's interesting. It's almost the things that were started without the pressure of the desire to make them big had the most potential. Is that a commonality, or?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like most people because most people in my world are not from that startup culture. So most people that I tend to encounter, across Middle America or wherever, they're out there trying to do something for themselves, and for their family. And so, for them, the motivation is, how can I have options? How can I have choices so that if I don't want to go to my job anymore, I don't have to. Or if something changes at my job, like I'm enjoying it now, but what if that situation changes?
Yeah.
Then I've got some security to do something else. So it's not so much about like, I'm going to build a huge company as it is, I'm going to do something for myself.
Yeah.
And so I've always, all of my work is for individuals, not companies. I think that's a key distinction. There's lots of people doing lots of wonderful work, for, so-called like more experienced or skilled entrepreneurs who have built like large organizations. And that's not me, because I've never done that myself. But I've spent, more than 20 years, making a living without a job, essentially. So that's what I do.
What were some of the most surprising things from the research to put together the book?
Yeah.
Was there some weird commonality? Was it geographic? Was it particular attitudes? Was it fear? Like
that's good. That's good. I'm just thinking, I can give you a real answer. I mean, I would say sort of like your last point about fear, very, very common to hear, like, I wanted to start this for a long time, but I never did because I thought I wasn't good enough, or I thought I was missing something. I was missing X, whether X is like money or access to something or just permission, essentially, like endorsement, like, hey, go do that, Chase, A lot of people say that, and they're always like, I wish I'd started sooner. I think another commonality is like this blend of curiosity, like the willingness to say, what if, like, what if I could actually make money doing this thing? This service sounds kind of crazy, like, but what if it worked? So that's the curiosity factor. But then you can be curious and never actually do anything. So the combination of curiosity and willingness to take action, like the willingness to actually do something with it. So you got lots of people that are like charging ahead, but they don't really have like ideas. And you got the people that have all the ideas but aren't doing something. And so I think the commonality is like you're practicing your skill of observation, which you never really like learned in school, but it's not that hard to learn. Yeah. Like it's just pay attention, pay attention, and then you're willing to kind of follow up on what you notice. And I think that's what leads people to start these kinds of projects, and the ones who succeed do that. The ones that are just kind of on the outside don't take action.
Amazing. And did you have a favorite?
No, I don't. No, it's kind of like every, favorite country, go to. I don't know. Well, there's this story I've been telling about this guy who makes teddy bears. Teddy bears like dressed up in like Marine uniforms or Army uniforms, and he calls them like Sergeant Sleep Tight, and it's to help kids sleep better at night, especially for military families and families with like, one of the parents is deployed overseas and the kid's having a hard time sleeping, and so he makes these like teddy bears, and like the bear's going to watch over you at night, so it's just really cute. He's got all these good stories from it, and I like it as well because like this guy was like a copywriter. He didn't have like a master's degree in making teddy bears. He's just like, how do I do that? How do I learn to source? How do I learn to source my product from an overseas manufacturer or, from the U.S. And then how do I distribute it? And all that stuff is like, you can figure it out. There's a path to figuring it out.
What's the best resource? Clearly, you're starting to see patterns in like, oh, everyone needs like a Shopify account, or like what are some resources that you see time and time and again that if people are asking questions, they're wondering like, God, I'd like to do that. There's probably 10 buckets of things, but what are some popular buckets and what would you recommend? Yeah,
I think it kind of depends on what project you want to have, right? So if you're like e-commerce, okay, I've got a product, I've got this thing I'm gonna sell. Got a guy in there who did like anti-mosquito wristbands and like ends up making a lot of money with that. So for there, like a Shopify site or something else like that, some kind of e-commerce platform. We've got some projects that are really content driven, like blog driven. Okay, so you need a blog, you need a website. Lots of different ways to do that for.
Do you have some recommendations?
$10 a month.
You mentioned Spotify or Shopify. Do you have a particular?
I've always worked with WordPress, for most of my internet life, and WordPress.com has like a moderate charge to it, but WordPress itself is free, open source. It doesn't cost you more than $5 or $10 a month to have a hosted, account somewhere. So you probably need an email list, of some kind. Yeah. Like stuff like this. I'm not gonna say it's not important, but I just think it's very easy to figure that out. Like that's like people get hung up on that stuff, and I don't think that's where they should get hung up. Does it really matter? Does it matter which email list program? Not really. They're all like there's a whole bunch of them. Does it matter? Nobody cares about that from the outside. I have to remind myself of that as well about like book publishing, because I'm really into I'm like a geek about book publishing. Like I know like all the nuances and stuff. And like my literary agent has to remind me from time to time. He's like, readers don't care about that. Readers do not care who the publisher is. Readers don't care about the nitty gritty and like the behind the scenes. I'm like, oh, that's good to remember. So same for all your online business stuff. They don't care about that. Your customer doesn't care whether it's Shopify or something else. They care about, do you have a product that they want? Is it clear how they can give you their money to receive that product? If yes, then they're good. If not, they're confused.
And then you can help them.
Right.
So you are famous for doing mega book tours.
Yeah.
Mega book tours. Like every 50 states. How long
was great. That
yeah.
was great.
That was fun.
All 50 states and every province in Canada. I did that on my first one. So that was 63 cities. It was great. Epic.
Now, what is it?
I wish I should do it. I should do it again. I feel like I'm a slacker. I'm just doing 14 cities for this tour.
Which is 7 more than 99% of authors.
Yeah, most authors don't do it at all, but I think they should. I think I learned so much through this process and talking with my readers. And it's not so much like a strict economic thing. Yeah. You know, it's like I'm, in Denver last night, 100 people. We sold 40, 50 books or something. But like, think about what it costs to travel there and like the time investment. It's not about the economics. It's about the conversation and the interaction. And like that first tour, when I went to North Dakota and there were 10 people, some of those are still with me now. Like it made an impact on those people. Some of them are still following me. So yeah, I'm doing 14 cities because I have the World Domination Summit coming up, and so it's kind of bookended because of that. So I'm hoping I can go back out in later in the summer or the fall and do some more.
World Domination Summit, there's only a couple left this year and next.
Yes.
Any tickets left?
We got maybe 10 tickets for this one, which is coming up very soon. If you might be watching this later. And next year might very well be sold out because a lot of our alumni want to come back. But you can check it out, worlddominationsummit.com.
Where else, if people are wanting to, is it like to book sites or to you personally, Art of Non-Conformity, chrisguillebeau.com?
Yeah, it's all a mess. But chrisguillebeau.com, which nobody can ever spell. But Side
I can
Hustle
spell it?
Yeah, you can. Oh, that's good.
I
can spell your name too. That's cool.
That's a sign of true friendship right there. You know how to spell your buddy's name.
Especially mine. That's true friendship. Or sidehustleschool.com. The podcast is at sidehustleschool.com or Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever people listen.
Wherever you listen. Yeah. And next big project that you haven't talked about publicly?
I'm not unwilling to say. I just don't. I'm kind of in the midst of this right now. So I don't know. I want to do a different kind of writing project. I'll say that.
A different kind of writing project.
Yeah.
All right. Well, congrats on the book. It's a beast. It's beautiful. It is very well documented. I was shocked at the level of research. Shocked. Like interviews with 100 people, photographs, all the details, income per year, websites, URLs, fun facts. Like it is a research beast.
Team effort, like I said.
Congratulations, bud. Thank you so much for being on
the
show.
Thank you, Chase.
And good luck tonight in your book talk.
Awesome. Cheers.
What's your next couple of locations?
Where am I going next? I don't know when people
I
watch
don't know
this.
how soon this is going to come out. Oh my gosh. But just so the people knew that they missed you.
Right, great. Next week I'm on the East Coast, so New York, Boston, then I think back to SF, and then Canada the following week.
Got it. Awesome. Canada. Your next week, Canada. Thank you very much for being on the show. Super happy you're here. Congrats on the book.
Man. Thank you.
And thanks for being a guest again. This is the second or third, maybe.
Second.
Right? Second? Dang. Check out Chris. All on the internet. He's also got a couple of amazing Creative Live classes. Travel.
That's right.
Make
your dream trip a reality.
Yep.
Yeah. It's actually really fun to make that course.
It's
still got people watching it actually.
Yeah,
so
you're still getting those checks.
Yeah.
Like, wait a minute. That was 3 years ago.
Fund my trip to Denver to talk to people about the book.
It was like, you're the master mile. How many miles do you have right now?
Now I've got like a couple million or something, but miles are always being devalued, so you got to use them, right?
Sorry, this is the slowest ending to a podcast ever because I just keep thinking of things I want to ask you about. Thanks for being on the show, bud.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Cheers.
Bye, everybody. See you again, hopefully, or hear you again, or you know what I mean. Audio you tomorrow. Signing off. Till then.